All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Live Ink. This is that new show that we started 3 weeks now. Every Wednesday, I'm going to try to be getting on here and doing some kind of work I'm working on for the week and give a little bit of advice and just talk about topics and things that me as an artist and an art teacher kind of run into very often. So today's topic is about making drawings versus making studies. It's about creating studies and practicing your skills versus just like when it's time to just like make a piece basically of art, and kind of why it's important to sort of have a deliberate sort of difference between these two things, I guess is a good way of putting it. Like the better it is to identify the fact that you kind of know when you're in one zone versus another zone, and even knowing that these kind of zones exist, because most artists probably do actually put themselves into these zones quite often, and but just like don't really actually ever know that there's like a hey, this is a good idea to exist in this space versus existing in this space kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus on here today with this my live sort of stream for the week. I've been really excited about this. It's kind of really fun to kind of think about topics that I want to talk about and give myself kind of a reason to jump on and go live. I really do actually enjoy it. I'm going to start doing it more often, jumping on the YouTube or the Instagram channel and just doing generic kind of like just play some music, chill out and draw kind of live stuff. But sometimes it's just really cool to have like a reason to hang out live. Not really expecting much because on our channel here, you know, we're still pretty new, still kind of getting where we need to go with kind of stuff, but it's not going to happen until we really start pushing it, making a lot of really cool shows and giving you guys reasons to hang out. So this is just one more of those reasons, right? Just one more chance for you guys to hang out with us for the week and watch me do my thing and then learn something new. And that's the big part here, is that I love getting on and sharing things when I have something to share and like having something to actually, you know, help you guys learn something new with. So yeah, like I said, I decided to cover this topic for two reasons. As a teacher, I run into this a lot with students, and then just talking to just young artists and what I can tell you, just kind of new artists at conventions and stuff. A lot of people get stuck on the topic of, I don't know, kind of like just thinking that they have every single thing they make has to be perfect. Like every single piece of art that you ever pump out, if it's not perfect, then cross it out in your sketchbook, rip it up, throw it away, and don't let anyone ever know that you ever made it. And that kind of practice, I think, is just, it's bad. It's bad practice as an artist to kind of not just accept where you are with your ability, and to just like kind of not realize that those things that you do in your sketchbook, even compared to those things you do outside your sketchbook and everything in between, like that there really are just practice. They really are just you studying for the big game, for the stuff that comes later. And so I just thought it'd be really cool to kind of sit down here and kind of actually have an episode about that, where the topic itself that I cover is sort of like, this is actually something that every artist goes through. Every artist actually does go through this, like everything in my sketchbook maybe is horrible, and every once in a while I make something I love. And why is that? And I think it has to do with this thing that I kind of identified and I kind of teach with my students, and that's there's a time to draw, there's a time to sketch, and there's a time to practice. And so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about here on today's stream, as I go through and as I apply these screen tones to my Deadpool that I kind of sketched up yesterday morning when I was jumping on. And later on on the Instagram, I'm going to have a little time lapse of me doing the pencils for this, because I've also been doing that too lately. It's been a really fun little extra practice, is doing a bunch of time lapses of my drawings and stuff. So the second reason is this other topic that I keep running into. And it's funny because basically at varying different times throughout every year, I always this topic seems to come up a bunch, and then it kind of goes away for a while, and then it comes back up. And it's just this sort of like talent versus ability. This like how much of drawing is learned versus how much of drawing is just like, hey, guess what? You were born with it, you know? And I have really strong opinions on that. I'm actually going to kind of try to stay away from those strong opinions and just kind of give more or less, I guess what I would say, facts about what I know about this topic. But I think it's really important because it goes into these other things that I'm talking about here. And that's that sort of that idea of deliberate practice or studies versus sort of like when you're creating a drawing and what you have new to learn from that. a big reason too is so on that topic of just sort of like seeing this come back up in my feeds and some groups. Like I'm a part of a lot of comic groups on Facebook that I like to sort of jump in every once in a while and have good conversation with. And this happened twice in the past 2 weeks. I saw people get on a weird soapbox talking about how it's bad to practice and do studies and to like, learn anatomy, because every artist should just kind of have their style. And that's what makes art is that it's creative and it's unique and there are no rules. And it's kind of not it at all. That's without saying it in a nice way, that's kind of BS. Art is learning the rules so you can break them. It doesn't help out any artist to just break a bunch of rules without understanding or knowing that they actually are literally breaking those rules. So that's another big reason where studying comes in. And like you got to take a step back every once in a while and actually learn something new and then go apply that to your drawing. So so those are the two reasons sort of this topic has kind of come up in my mind and it's kind of hot, and I want to sort of take the time to talk about it with you guys. So so I'm actually going to focus on that second one first before I jump into that first one. And that second one is, like I said, is this idea of sort of my ability to draw what I already know and my ability that I learn as I go on throughout my sort of career as an artist, right? So this idea here, and I'm going to do some sort of a bit of quoting from a really well-known writer that a lot of people probably will also know, and it's Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about this idea of the 10,000 hours, and this is how you sort of master a thing, is by spending so much time on a thing. It's after you spend 10,000 hours, you become a master of the thing. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of people take this way too literal, and they think that literally, like after I've spent 10,000 hours doing a thing, I have nothing else to learn from that thing. And the idea is just that is such a giant, unachievable number. I think that the point is that you will always be studying things, learning new things about those things, and then applying those things, right? And what it comes down to is this. I'm not trying to get too sort of education major with you guys, but that just sort of is who I am. But there's this growth mindset is what we like to call it. And the idea is that if you spend any amount of time doing a thing, that as a human being, we grow and we learn and we become better at that thing in the end. And the idea of the 10,000 hours is this, don't expect immediate results, right? Sit down and draw for an hour a day for a week, and you might feel a little bit of like getting more comfortable with your pencil and maybe a little bit more comfortable, like faster maybe is a good way of putting it, right? But maybe your eyes don't actually get any better. Let's say you do that. Let's say you draw eyes for an entire week. You sit down for an hour and you just keep drawing eyes to get better at them, right? But after a week, you don't feel much better at that thing. Well, that's because you only spent a week at it and not like tons and tons of time practicing it over and over and over and over and over again, right? So you gotta be in that mindset that like eventually all this work you put in will make you grow in that thing. And I can't really say anything else I want to say about this topic until it's just we're on the same page with that, right? Like we got to be on the same page, and we got to agree that literally putting in tons of time and work and effort on a thing will eventually make me grow at that thing, right? Okay, so I didn't want to spend quite as much time as I just did talking about that, but I just, like I said, if we don't agree on that moving forward with what I'm going to talk about, we really won't agree on anything that I'm about to talk about. And I think that's also why I brought this up. And actually, I guess there is that point. Maybe you don't agree with what I'm saying here. I actually have plenty more to say that maybe will change your mind on that, right? And that's this idea that, like, if you sit down 10 people in a room who don't draw very often and you ask them to draw a thing, each person in that room, even though they say they don't draw, will all have like kind of a different sort of approach and ability. Some people you might be like, oh, they were just so naturally talented because they were just able to just whip that up and draw that thing. And I think that's that innate ability thing, and that some people are born with and or have learned along the way without realizing it how to do certain things that they just don't do very often, right? But what's really important to understand is that someone with, I don't know, let's say someone with 50% already under their belt, doesn't do it very often, good at a thing, right? But never nurtures or tries to push or grow at that thing. The person who comes behind them with 10% ability, but is super passionate and puts in tons of time and effort and practice, will eventually surpass that person. And then that person who sort of had that head start loses that head start and would have to catch up, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of a really important thing to talk about too. So that's that second thing of sort of why I want to talk about this. But really, the real talk that I want to have with you guys is the first one. And that is this idea that every single thing you make in your sketchbook, it does not have to be a beautiful masterpiece and should not be a beautiful masterpiece, right? So what I like to do is I'm going to kind of bullet point this, is what I'm going to kind of do for this talk. And I'm going to say that there are 3 things that we're about to talk about here: sketching, studying, and practicing. Or sorry, sketching, drawing, and studying. And I'm going to talk studying, I'm also going to call sort of deliberate practice, right? I don't want to talk about these guys like on a loop, basically. So it's important to understand that when you're drawing and when you're learning something new, we're especially talking about drawing here, right? Because this is a drawing podcast. The idea here is that sometimes we want to draw something. Let's say, you use my Deadpool as an example. You're like, I really want to draw this Deadpool, but I'm actually not good at faces, right? Or I'm not good at proportions and heads to bodies or whatever the thing is, right? Well, then I want to practice. I want to literally spend some time reading and researching and learning some new ways to apply the techniques that I need to know. And then I want to sketch. I want to spend some time literally just doodling out concepts, ideas, actually trying to sort of reproportion that thing. And I want to be sloppy. I want to be quick. I want to be messy. I want to figure this thing out with no rules. Like when you sketch, you don't show anybody that sketch. Sketching is like a private thing in my mind. It's like we do all these quick, sort of messy and sloppy doodles. And the point of those is that they're not anything to brag about or to show anybody. They are literally there to exist for the sake of just getting better at a thing that we want to practice, right? So that's kind of how these things are kind of a big circle. They go hand in hand. All right, I want to learn something new at drawing. I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to look that thing up and I'm going to kind of research that thing. And then I'm going to get in my sketchbook and I'm going to try that thing out a couple of different times. And then I'm going to cut some paper up and I'm going to actually literally draw out, and I'm going to spend a bunch of time and I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours doing my best erasing and making it beautiful, right? And that's it right there. That's the key to this sort of idea of practice or studying, sketching, and then making art. If the only thing you're ever worried about is making the best piece of art you've ever made, then you'll end up just in an infinite loop of only ever applying the knowledge you already came into the game with, right? But just like I said, right? Okay, I said that no matter how much time you put into something, right? No matter how good you were from the beginning, if you put a bunch of time into something, you're going to get better at that something. So that will happen. You'll get better at the things you kind of already know, but only to the point of what you already know, if that makes sense, right? It's like if you try to, if you learn how to draw a square wrong, and you keep practicing to draw that same exact square in that same exact wrong way, you'll get really good at drawing that incorrect square, but you'll get really good at drawing it incorrectly, right? So there has to be this point or this time where in between drawings, you step back, you study, you learn something new, you make a mess out of some lines in a sketchbook, you apply that knowledge, and then you decide, okay, now it's time to get in there and do this thing, right? This works really well with like my students, and I'm going to use this analogy, which is funny because I'm not actually even really a sports guy, right? But it always works really well to talk about it like this, right? You gotta, if you go to practice as someone who does sports, and which is funny because I'm not, but I know this is still exactly how it goes. You learn some kind of new rule or new play, right? You kind of analyze that thing and figure out exactly how to do it. Then you attempt to do that thing over and over and over again until it feels like it works. And then in a giant game where the stakes are big and they matter, you then apply that thing that you've been spending your entire week or your entire month or whatever of practice trying to do. And then you try to make that thing work when the stakes are high. And I think that's kind of that's it right there, right? We've got the stakes are high when we're creating this drawing that we love and is precious to us and is beautiful. And we want to make sure that it comes out correctly. And then when it doesn't, we rip it up, we cross it out, we put a big giant X over it, and we get really bummed out about it, right? Well, we got to stop drawing all the time when the stakes are high. And we got to literally give ourselves a break. We got to say, okay, I'm going to learn how to draw eyes better. I'm going to draw them in my sketchbook. I'm going to be sloppy. I'm going to try and figure this thing out for a week. And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to try my hardest I've ever tried to draw a really cool, awesome eye that I'm going to share with the world. And that right there is the loop, or sort of the creative practice is what I kind of call it with my students. The idea that we have to want something, study that thing, learn something new about that thing, practice it over and over again until we feel good about that thing, and then apply that thing to an actual piece of art, right? Every single thing that you create all day long as an artist cannot and should not be the final finished piece. We're going to drive ourselves crazy as artists. We're going to burn ourselves out. We're going to quit. We're going to stop drawing. We're going to get ourselves in that zone that no artist likes to be in, where they just don't enjoy drawing anymore. Right? And that really is it. I mean, that's all in a nutshell. And I think I actually talked way faster and said way more than I meant to about all that stuff. But really, when I bring this to a point and to a summary, right, to a head, I want you guys to realize that you, like, the pressure of drawing, you just need to find a way to get rid of it. And I think the best way to do that is to give yourselves like literal sort of rules or a practice to follow in terms of, okay, right now I am in stage blank, right? I am in study stage. I don't know a lot about drawing proportion correctly. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just spend my whole week learning more about drawing proportion correctly. And then you do. And then you get that chance to really take it off your chest and not stress and be like, okay, cool. Oh, most people draw the body at 7.5 heads. I never knew that. You use the head as a measuring tool for drawing the body. Oh, some people do 8 though. And it actually, you can adjust that proportion as you learn that proportion. And that's how you play with different body shapes. I never knew that, right? Well, if you never knew that, that's why bodies are hard. And that's why you've been stuck for so long telling yourself that proportion is hard and all those other things that we do to ourselves and we tell ourselves, right? So you got to find a way to get out of your heads with things like this. And I think that the best way to do that is to kind of create a practice for yourself, to create rules that you follow every single time, so that you can tell yourself too when that drawing sucks, instead of getting super bummed out and over it, you can be like, oh, that's cool. It's totally fine that these eyes aren't turning out well because I'm just sketching right now. And if they don't turn out well for so long, well, that must just be because I need to go back to the drawing board and I need to learn something new again about eyes. Because even within the idea of just drawing a body, okay, I have to know how to draw the body itself. Then I have to know how to draw all the little different random features of the body, like the eyes. Like there are different rules and different proportions within the larger proportion of a human that I need to learn how to follow. If I don't ever spend the time to learn them, what am I doing sitting down trying to make the best, most realistic human I've ever drawn without taking the time to do some studies first, some sketches, learn something new, apply it, move on, rinse, repeat, right? That is it. That is, if anything ever that I said in this giant ramble of while I'm cutting all this paper up into little pieces around this Deadpool, it is that. Learn something new from drawing every week, every month. I don't know, give yourself that kind of thing too. I try to step back every once in a while and learn something new, no matter how good or confident I feel about a thing I'm about to draw. I've been, even these little 5x7 headshots that I've been doing, I gave myself a goal that when I do the pencils for these, I'm only allowed to spend X amount of time on them. And then so when I do these little sketches, I give myself 30 minutes for the pencils, and then I do my inks, and then I do my screen tone and all that kind of stuff, and I make a finished piece. And the idea is to actually learn something new from it. So each one of these times that I make one of these, they are almost like a little bit of a study, right? I end up putting the finishing touch on them and making a nice little drawing, but I don't give myself tons of pressure to get it started in the first place, because I'll tell myself that like the sake of doing this thing is to study for something bigger. Pull out my 9x12 or my 11x14 paper and make a nice big full body shot, cool composition or something like that, right? These little guys are kind of me in my practice zone, sort of doing a study of some kind of new proportion or something that I've just learned. All right. That actually does sum up already this week's episode. So I didn't have a big thing to talk about. I just kind of had this thing on my mind because, like I said, I've just been seeing a lot of people posting about it and talking about it kind of in really negative kind of ways, like why even bother practicing, trying to be better at art if I'm not good in the first place, I'll never get up to the level or whatever, that kind of thing. I mean, you can meet any artists that you look up to and ask them how long they've been drawing, and you will definitely hear many years more than me, probably even. Like, just like, you got to put in tons of work over the years, and you got to love it too. I guess that's a big thing too, right? If you don't enjoy sitting down every time to draw and drawing, I mean, you're also kind of you're gonna get yourself burnt out real hard and real fast. So thanks again for saw a couple people pop in and pop out, hang out for a minute. Apparently the screen I was watching over here, though, definitely was not actually showing my chat. So I'm going to pop my head up real quick and check my camera. Yeah, Ace. So that is, it's, I don't know how many times at a convention, at a live draw, like, like a drink and draw, a meetup, or any of those kind of things that I've done, I've like gotten into a conversation of someone thinking like in all these terms I've just talked about, but like opposite, and kind of just really negative and down on themselves about a lot of stuff. So yeah, sometimes these, and that's kind of why I invented this sort of this segment, is that there's just so many of these things that in my mind, or in the mind of a lot of those artists that I do hang out with and follow, it's kind of commonplace. But I think for new artists getting in, you can wander into the wrong person's channel and hear someone who's pretty decent at drawing say something that might get into your head and be like, oh man, I guess I have to find my style and my voice and all that kind of stuff, and I'll never get better at that thing. I don't know. It's insane. There's just so much of this kind of stuff out. And I think it's because it's just so easy to get in and, like I did, make a drawing channel and start sharing things with people. And it's so I just hope that whoever hears this or watches this learns something new, finds a way to kind of create a practice out of what they do, and, doesn't lose hope in the fact that they may have been drawing for a few months and it doesn't feel like they've been getting anywhere. So, hey, thanks for hanging out with me again. Thanks for watching this. If you're watching this later, I'm going to post this guy later this week once I actually put all the finishing touches on him, as well as sort of some process video of him tomorrow. So thanks a lot, guys. Take it easy and catch me next Wednesday for Live Ink. Peace.